guys! Today we are going to build user authentication. But before we will start, remember to subscribe our channel, turn on the notifications so you won't miss any future lesson of our courses, and remember about thumbs up. Hello everyone! Today is our fifth lesson of Golang Course and we are going to create user authentication as I promised. We are building our application using the Golang backend that my friend is creating in another course. If you don't follow it yet, I will give you the link. And some time ago, my friend created for us the endpoint for user authentication that we are going to use today. So, we will check if our user is able to access our application after he logged in once, and if his data set up in the session storage are correct. Are you excited? Let's start!
Okay, so let's open your favorite code editor and let's open the code from the lesson 4th. If you don't have it, you can download it from our GitHub, I'll leave you the link. And let's start by some updates in our user.service.ts file. What we need to do is we have to update our login and register function because for our authentication endpoint we will need JVT token and the user ID. Right now we are saving to our session storage only JVT token and we need to add user ID to the session storage as well. That's why we are going to update login and register function. So inside this if statement, we are going to add something similar to the one above, but saving res.data.id. So session storage, set item, user ID, res.data.id. Okay, and let's copy paste it to our register function. Cool, great, that's updated. So now let's go to our guard. And we are going to change our canActivate function and we are going to rebuild it absolutely. So let's delete what was inside and let's start by adding the parameter to the function. This parameter will be road and it will be the type of activated road snapshot, which we have to import as well. So remember to do it if you don't have the plugin to your code editor as mine that imports stuff automatically. And let's change the expected result of the function to observable boolean or any. Okay, we don't have imported observable, so we have to do it. So let's import observable from RxJS. Great. So what we need right now, it's user ID from our session storage, it's our JVT token from session storage, and using this we are going to build a header. So let's start by defining the user ID. It's session storage, get item, and user ID. And similar with the JVT token. Session storage, get item, JVT. Now we are going to define the header that we are going to pass to our authentication function, and inside that header we are going to pass our JVT token as a parar. But to do it, we need to import HTTP headers and also HTTP clients, which will be useful for us when we will be making the get call to the API. So let's import both of them at once. Typo. Okay, let's pass it to our constructor, so we don't forget about that. So private HTTP client. Okay, so now we can define our header. Let's call it like header, like request header. New HTTP headers. And here we will define the content type as application JSON, and we will define the authorization. And our authorization will be bearer plus JVT token. Okay, so now we are ready to create our API call. Before the API call, we just would like to add one more check, because we need user ID and our JVT token to create that call. So if we don't have those values, and it may happen that those values will be null or undefined, then we don't want to make the call, just return the false and don't let user into our application. So we want to make our API call only in case that user ID and JVT token are present. That's why we are going to add the if statement, and if our user ID and JVT token, then let's do the API call. Also, there's one more thing. We have to define the URL for our API, and it will be the same like for login and register. Because as you remember, we set our proxy, so it's the same port as our application frontend, just with API. So we will return this HTTP get URL, user and user ID, because that's our endpoint, and our rec header, because it's a get method, so we don't need to send anything. Now let's use pipe, and here we will use map, but we need to import it first. Besides that, we need to import two more things, auth from RxJS and catch error also from RxJS, but operators like map. So let's do it by once to not come back to our imports again. Great. So map will give us the response, and we can do something with the response right now. So the first thing that we would like to do with the response is to check if the user ID that we have saved in our session storage is the same as the user ID of the user returned in the response. We would like to avoid giving access to the different user, so let's check if user data ID is the same as user ID, but in our case the user ID from the session storage is a string and the user ID from the response is a number. That's why we would like to change our user ID to number as well, so we can compare it. And if everything is correct, then we would like to return true. In case that it's not correct, we don't want user to come into our application, so we will navigate him or her to the login form. and we will return false. Oh, here's one more thing, because for the router and navigate by URL, we need to import one more thing, but let's do it in a second. Okay, so let's import router and let's add it to constructor. And also we can delete the user service right now because we won't use it here anymore. Okay, now it's time to use getError. And that will also return false in case of any errors. And the last element of this function will be the else of this first if statement. And we want it to return the same as the else inside the map. So we want the redirection to the login form and return false. You might be surprised because previously we didn't have the login path, but this we are going to change in a second. Because currently we want our empty path to be the dashboard and we want the user to be redirected straight to the dashboard. Then the guard will check if user can go to the dashboard. If he is not authorized, then he will be redirected to the login form. And if he is authorized and the authentication went correctly, then he can access the dashboard. Our can activate is set here. Okay. Cool. The next thing we are going to do is to do some small changes in our user. We are going to create here a function that will get the user from API from the same endpoint. And then we will listen for this user inside the resolver, which will pass our data to the routing, and then after we will be redirected to the proper route, we will get the data back. So here we will just create the getUser function. We can delete this previous isAuthenticated function because it's not useful anymore. And let's start. getUser. Here we also need to define user ID, JVT token and the headers because it's like the same endpoint as we used for the canActivate method. And then let's just return this HTTP GET, the URL and user ID and the header. And that's it here. Let's save here, yeah. What we are going to do right now is we are going to create a resolver. Inside the services, let's create user resolver folder, and inside that folder, let's create user resolver.service.ts file. And in this file, let's create a service that will be a resolver. Let's import the injectable. Let's import a few useful things from the router. And let's import our user service as well. Besides that, we will need an observable. Besides that, we will need an observable as well. And when everything is ready, we can start defining the injectable. And then defining a class. So export class, user resolver service, implements resolve. Type any and let's pass the constructor at start, where we will define our user service. Great, and now just let's use the resolve method. Let's pass the route parameter as activated route snapshot and the state parameter as the router state snapshot. And as a response, we would like any or observable never. Typo here. Okay, and inside of this we are going to call our getUser function from the user service. And that's it. Now we have to assign our resolver to the app road, to this one with the dashboard, as a resolve, user, which is the value that we are passing, and user resolver service. Remember that you have to import user resolver service if you don't have the plugin that imports stuff automatically. Great, let's save, and now we can go to our dashboard component and implement the data that will be passed with the navigation. Okay, so we are going to change everything what's here inside ng-on-init. So we can delete our user service and we can import the activated route. Let's define it in the constructor. Great, and let's change this piece of code. This row the data, subscribe, data user any. Okay, so let's subscribe to our this row data and let's assign this user to our actual user. And when it's ready, we can go to our dashboard component, and here we will fix just one last thing. Sometimes our response from the API comes a little bit later, and then we can see the error that user accounts are not defined and user is not defined. And that's why we would like to display app account balance conditionally. And for that we are going to use ng-if user. So if user will be defined, then we can display this piece of our UI, and if user won't be defined, that the frontend will wait a second. Okay, it's ready to be tested right now, so let's go to the console and let's start our application. If you don't remember, it's ngserve. And also keep in mind that you have to run your backend as well. And if you are not creating it with us and you would like to use our backend, in the description of this video there is a link for our Golang course. So you can check this out, you can create it, or you can get the code from our GitHub. Okay, so the first thing that we would like to do before checking the application and testing is to open developer tools, and if you are in Chrome, of course, it looks like this. In different browsers it's also present, but it looks a little bit different. And what you have to find is the application and storage. Here you can see the session storage, and inside the session storage you have our link to our localhost 4200, and it should be empty, because currently we would like to test it without any data of the user, and we would like to see if it's possible to come to the dashboard. Okay, and here you can see that even if we try, then we are redirected to the login form. We can go to the register form, but still we can't go inside the application. Now let's try to log in with any user that we have. Oops, there's something wrong. Okay, so we have two small bugs here. The first one is with our URL. We forgot about the slash at the end, and it's not correct. And the second error is with our header. We forgot to leave the space between bearer and JVT token. So you need to fix it inside the outward and inside user service, because we are using it twice. So let's just add the space. And there's one more thing that we forgot about. We've changed our paths, but we forgot that we have some of dashboard paths left, some redirection to the dashboard path. So let's go to our user service and delete both of them. Both dashboard paths are located inside login function and register function. So just leave there an empty space. Okay, let's test it out. Let's try testing by login first. I have my user. Voila, it works. And I can refresh the page and it still works because the data is valid. So let's clear our data right now and let's go to the registration page. And let's try to register the new user. Let me think of any fake name. Okay, sign in. Whoa, it works. Let's just try to refresh it. Yeah, it works perfectly. I hope now you understand how authentication works. We had some bugs, so if you missed something, check out the code in our GitHub. I'll leave you the link in the description, so feel free to download it if you would like and go through it once again.
Congratulations! You've just finished user authentication and lesson 5 of our Angular course. Our application is growing and our login, our registration and authentication is fully completed. In the next lesson, we are going to create transactions. I hope you will join me. If you liked the video, remember to leave us thumbs up, to leave a comment with your feedback, and to subscribe our channel so you won't miss the next videos. And of course, turn on the notifications. It's very important. I hope to see you all in the next video.